Let's unravel Geeta's world. Hello, everyone, to the 82nd episode of Geeta's World. I am your host, Anna Priyadarshini, and with me is Geeta Mohan. Hi, Geeta, how are you?
Hi, Anna. I'm good.
How
And
was
I-
your week? You're tracking
Busy. We
US
have a lot of
elections.
things happening. The US elections, we have the Iran elections, which we'll be discussing today.
Yeah.
But also, we have a lot of important things coming up in the India Today group. So I'm a part of the process
Yeah.
in terms of putting things together on that
Lovely.
front, which is our big India Today conclave. So
It's in March next
15,
week.
16.
Yeah, next week.
And you'll have some fabulous voices, not just from the country, but from across the world. So conclave to
Yeah.
really look out for or watch out for.
Yeah, you must be super busy, and I'll have to just
No,
pull you in the studio.
Is it, does it fall on a, no, it falls on a weekend. We're all right.
Oh, lovely. Thank
We're
God.
all right.
Thank God. My biggest scare. But like you said, US elections, of course, and last when we were discussing the elections as a primer, you mentioned the Super Tuesday, which is very important.
Which
So
is today, by the way.
it is today, yeah.
But
So
US will only be waking up to it, and we would already have dropped our episode for the day.
yes.
So we can just give a slight bit of a primer.
Yeah, I mean, 15 states, Super Tuesday is that, right? 15 states and one union territory is going for the polls. And it will be like basically, this will be like an assertion as to who the clear nomination, the Republican nomination will be. And I think as we can track, Nikki Haley is trailing. Yeah,
She's trailing.
behind Trump.
It is going to be a very important one. 15 states, including American Samoa, are going to go to polls, electing their going into the primaries.
Yeah.
And it will be a clincher for either side, which means that over here right now, Donald Trump is poised to do very well. And should he do well, as he has in the recent past, we did see Nikki Haley make some inroads with the last DC win. But should he win these primaries hands down, it would really mean that Nikki Haley would have to bow out. We'll again have to wait and see how that really goes for them. But look at the numbers stacked up right now. To win the presidential nomination, either candidate needs about 1,215 votes, of which up until now, Donald Trump has about 244 delegates, whereas Nikki Haley has just about 43. So the percentages and the numbers are really not in favor of Haley. We'll have to wait and see how this Super Tuesday really goes
And what
for her.
if Trump also is not able to clinch that number then?
Then they'll go forward with the other states. This is the Super Tuesday where 15 states are going.
Yes.
But they still have other states, which is why I said if Nikki Haley does not do well, depending on the numbers, she'll see if she can stick around in the race or will have to bow out.
Okay.
So should he do well, should he do well in these 15 states, in all probability there will be, and the gap increases, then Haley will have to take a decision. Because every round in the United States of America costs a lot of money. Election in the US is a very, very expensive business. And there are no caps as such. So you'll see a lot of spending. And a lot of the spending in terms of advertisements, billboards, has focused on immigration.
Yes.
So a very strong point for Trump.
That's why you said that he has the money in the...
He has the money. He has, So it looks very difficult for Nikki Haley. In all probability, we will be seeing a Biden versus Trump. A repeat.
Race. Yeah.
So let's see how that really pans out. But we'll get back to our audience on how this really pans out or how this looks for the US elections once the Super Tuesday is over, and there will be a lot more that will happen over the week.
Definitely. And still, I think the previous episode that we did was really a primer to understanding the elections in particular, not just this particular race, but in terms of like, where Biden stands, the Israel-Hamas war, many points that we have discussed. So it's a, like you can actually go and check out the previous episode on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere that you want to. Now coming to the Iran elections, US is a staunch rival and foe. Um, so like I said, this year is the election year. Iran is, of course, going for that. So just a little bit of brief as to refresh in our memory. So last Friday itself, Iranians went and cast their ballots. So to elect members of both the new legislature and the Assembly of Experts. So Assembly of Experts is basically they elect a new supreme leader. And the in Iran, how it functions is that the real power, vests in the hands of the supreme leader. So now the latest update, as we record, it shows that Iranian conservatives they have dominated the majority of seats in elections for a clerical body and the national legislature. We should not forget, Geeta, we have discussed Iran in particular of the Mahsa Amini protests. So this election comes against a backdrop of significant upheaval. There's weight of international sanctions which have triggered an economic crisis in Iran. There is, of course, regional tensions escalating due to the Israel-Hamas war. Now we were actually expecting that this could sort of influence and reverberate through the elections this time. But unfortunately, not all voices are participating in this electoral process. A number of incumbent parliamentarians they have been disqualified from re-election, and some reformists are also boycotting the election this time. In fact, the voter turnout has just been like 41%, and last year in 2020 it was around 42 point something percent. So it's like the lowest since
Yes.
79
I mean,
revolution.
last time was only significantly more, very, very insignificant, decrease from last time. But certainly this time is the lowest
Yeah.
since the revolution.
Yes. So, Geeta, I think in this episode we can actually look at this and the entire electoral process closer, and the fact that the nation is actually grappling with internal dissent. There's external pressures. There's a political landscape which is marked by competing ideologies. So, placing all this, how does this election even matter? Because there are so many who are saying that the elections are ultimately a farce, a sham. So I just want to carry forward this, thinking itself, this thought itself about the elections being a farce. Why I say that? Because as far as I could read and understand, so Iran is a different government altogether. It's an authoritarian. We are mostly familiar with a democratic setup here in India and the US elections that we have discussed. So for some listeners and viewers, we just want to understand how Iran functions differently. So it's an authoritarian Islamic republic with a presidential system. So the supreme leader's position has been held by Ali Khamenei since Khamenei's death in 1989. Now, this time, Geeta, there were about 15,200 candidates who took part. They were in the fray for fighting 290 seats. All these candidates, they are chosen. They are vetted by the Guardian Council. So there's no such, change in power that we will see. Neither the new parliament can actually pose any threat to the Supreme Power. The supreme power is also decided by the Assembly of Experts, which is, of course, I think it depends on like aging factor. If certain person has died and then you want to see a successor. So there's no, it's just that Khamenei's loyalists are going to, take part in the election process. So the successor is more or less decided. So what is the point of the elections in terms of like, I don't know if this will contribute to the international standing or so, if that's the thought behind it. So if you can weigh on that.
See, Iran has been a very politically active nation per se. People are quite aware. They are very political, have been in the past in the history. They're culturally very, very rich. They've held the tradition of asking. But since the revolution, a lot has changed. And despite that, you see a lot of people still trying to come out and say, well, we are a country that took pride in debate, discourse, questioning, women's role. And all of that changed for Iran and has been so for a very, very long time. What has happened in the recent past is with Mahsa Amini's killing and the protests in the streets of Iran, that there is more of that voice of dissent that could be heard. With the access to social media and internet, although there was a lot of internet blockade and all of that, but despite that, there was internet and the fact that a lot of them are on social media, although maybe they use proxy servers, VPNs, they could get their voices out. A lot of them got their voices out. A lot of visuals, which, in the past would have never been seen, now can be seen by people. What's happening in Iran? How is it, moving forward or not? Again, you said, we are more aware of and privy to democracies and not these authoritarian governments. Well, elections and a system of voting really does not translate into a country being democratic. Because the means, the methods that are used for that voting of people, how they're checked and monitored, is again, should be a parameter to decide whether if a country is indeed democratic or not.
That's a very valid point, Geeta, that you made.
Because a lot of countries, look at all these countries have elections, including North Korea.
Yeah,
China.
We had an entire debate also.
Yes.
brewing here in India. Yeah.
So again, it might not be democratic, but it's the voter turnout that screams volumes of how unhappy people are. The fact that a lot of the reformist parties and their representatives were boycotted, were not allowed to stand for elections, some of them not allowed to even vote, clearly shows that there was there were methods used to ensure that the conservatives return. And that's what's happened. It's a victory of the conservatives. The administration, in fact, because of the turnout being that low, they actually extended the voting period for 6 more hours to see if, people will really turn up so that the voter turnout increases. That didn't happen. So, you see, at the end of the day, Iran is a country that has... we might not agree with everything, but on some foreign policy counts, they have, and a lot of people say, oh, well, they support Hezbollah, they support, they are a part of the axis of evil. But they're also standing for the cause of Palestine. And in that, if you see, the leadership has used that in this election. They're saying, well, we are the true saviors of Islam, or we're the true savior of Muslims, and use that as a political tool. People are making that differentiation. Well, yes, the country should be supporting this cause, but the country cannot be treating us, or the administration cannot be treating us the way it has treated us. The other important aspect is the anti-America rally. All through you'll see visuals of political campaign where there were American flags on the streets. In the streets, on the roads, for people to walk over and saying, and the messaging was that we will not be suppressed by these so-called oppressors. Message is strong, whichever country thinks and is not aligned with another country, but they use that again as a tool. All this comes, Anna, amid a massive economic and political crisis that Iran is reeling under. Economic because of the many years of sanctions it has been under.
Yeah.
And it has a few partners and allies, which is why they still have managed to survive. India also is an important partner of Iran, and Iran is important for India. So India would like to see a more democratic process of having, elected members, more freedom for women, less curtailment of people, their movement, press, so on and so forth. But again, we'll have to wait and see how one engages.
Yeah.
Two important people in this entire process who were part of the administration under Khamenei, and now one who was not allowed to stand for elections, the former president, Rouhani, and the other was not allowed to even vote, Khatmi. Again, both from the reformist faction. Speaks volumes of where the country is headed, but also some introspection within Tehran absolutely required in how long can they sustain this? Because a country can fight the world if the people are with them. How do you fight external forces if internally you're facing such dissent, anger, and sort of an opposition?
One of the interesting points that you made regarding, like we said, voter turnout is definitely a reflection of how the people, the Iranians are actually thinking. But there were many video dispatches that I watched, Geeta, over the weekend that said that the voters who did actually go out to vote did not factor in critical issues such as inflation or education or health, but on who are Iran's enemies.
I'm telling you, that was an absolute tool. It was a political tool for those who were going to vote.
Yeah,
But Anna, those who did not go and vote, the 68% or 69%. It's 41 right now, or so close to 69% who
we
did
don't
not.
have the official figures. But
unofficially, whatever the figures are, 41 is low, right?
Yes.
So the 69% of the population did not go out and vote. So this is a political tool for those who actually think that this was more important than anything else. They actually went out and voted.
Yeah.
A lot of them might not be happy with how the administration has worked or, the economic situation, promises made.
And that's why it was, the message from Khamenei was carefully worded that, you need to know who Iran's enemies are. And that's why you need to vote, come out and vote.
Yeah.
Very skillful. But I just want to weigh a bit more on, about the reformists once, because while I was reading Geeta, there's one side that I want to highlight, which is what elite reformists believe and what they are banking on. These elite reformists, this faction particularly, they see radical change in Mojtaba. Now, who is he? He is Khamenei's second son and likely to be the successor. Either he or the president, Raisi, would be the successor. So now it's a stated fact that for more than 30 years now, Khamenei has held absolute power. And we saw the Islamic Republic become more ideological, totalitarian, and more repressive. Now, what this elite reformist faction believes is that they believe his son Mojtaba, he could be the successor. And he could be the modern radical reformist. But there were so many experts inside and outside of Tehran who point out that Mojtaba Khamenei is no different from his father. Now, Raisi, he is infamously, he's known as the Butcher of Tehran. His repressive roles, it's not latent. But Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, we don't really know much of him because he's worked in the shadows mostly. So I want to understand the reformist belief here that yes, of course, they think differently. They do not approve of the clerical system in Iran. But why is it that if the experts, several experts inside and outside of Tehran can actually see this through, that Mojtaba is no different, then what is the reason that these elite reformist faction is still living on sort of so-called hope in the clerical system that he could actually be, one of the change makers?
I agree with the faction that says that there might not be a huge difference,
Yeah.
also because of his own, actions in the recent past. Little must be known of Moshtaba outside of Iran, but people in Iran know who he is, what his ideology is. Because of a generation. He might seem a little more reformist, but in terms of running the government and how the government and administration will run under him or be under him, I don't think there would be a huge shift. Emulating from what the others are doing in this entire peninsula, not just the Persian Gulf, but in the Arab world, there could be some reforms, maybe for women. But beyond that, I don't think in terms of real on the ground, moving towards a radical change in the conservative society that Iran is, I don't think that's really going to happen. So, and Ibrahim Raisi is known to be a hardcore conservative. So, either way, whoever the Grand Council really decides on, which I think would be the former rather than the latter, which is Moshtaba. It will only ensure that whoever comes ensures and assures continuance. So if somebody is going to elect, and if that Grand Council, which is a body of conservatives, are going to sit, they are going to decide on who best will carry forward a very hard fought, freedom for these conservatives from the Shah dynasty.
Yes.
So for them, it's a revolution that was hard fought, won with a lot of blood spilled, and they don't want to compromise on that. They think this is the way to go, and that the real saviors of Muslims, of Islam, of the religion, of the peoples they are the Iranians, the clerics of Iran. So the Grand Council will decide, and I don't think the Grand Council will move far away from how Khomeini or Khamenei have really taken the country forward.
Yeah. Although on the similar line of thought, I was actually thinking because, like you said, I mean, the new regime will not be that sort of modern or, it won't be a change from what we have seen in the past and will not allow women more rights. But I was thinking a bit differently here. The video dispatches of foreign media coverage that I saw from Iran, they talked about first about the low voter turnout of just 41%, and also many women walking the streets without the hijab, and common citizens being very open to talk to foreign media, to express their anger towards the government, which is new, which is, it's quite strange after what we have seen last year. Now, like like I said previously about the fact that many Iran observers are predicting that Mojtaba could step up. Now, I wanted to ask you in this angle as to, however unlikely it may seem, you think Iran can actually go the Saudi Arabia way, where to sort of build on how emboldened it feels on the international front in, supporting Shia militias across the Middle East. It will start conceding space to the citizens' movement that has achieved, epic proportion at home with people, despite extensive CCTV surveillance just, going about their business, criticizing the government to foreign media, and women not adhering to the dress code. Do you think a different regime in some way, although I've stated this, but in some way they will allow women more rights? Because like I said, the reason could be purely, economical, as it was in Saudi Arabia. It wanted to diversify its economy away from oil to other things. But for that, it needed to project, more respect for citizens' rights to the outside world.
Right. You see, you spoke about the videos that we saw from Iran ahead of the elections and the campaigning, and a lot of them were not wearing headgear, which is actually quite true. That it was refreshing to see a lot of them. I saw some of them say that we've never been asked to cover our heads, which is quite strange. But yes, there are videos of them, but they were speaking to foreign journalists. So,
this is the election year, so
yeah, the election year. So I don't know whether it's election year or no, or just because of that. But moral policing is a problem in Iran. The fact that somebody can come and take you on for improper dress code. Masa Amini had her headgear. She just had a few strands of hair out.
Yes.
That's all right. Yes. But the fact is also that in this election, we've seen a huge participation of women standing for elections. One report said that there are about 6 women standing on each seat. That's a lot of women who are coming out. So what am I trying to say, Anna, over here is that it's not just a regime that has seen opposition from women. There are many women within Iran who think that this is the way to go, that this is the right way of doing things. So the administration, the supreme leader, so to say, they do not have opposition from all women. They do have a lot of women support as well. A lot of them are unhappy with the economic situation, so they blame the government for it. Now, if you see that in the very same videos, while they're criticizing the government, the administration, so on and so forth, there's one person they're not allowed to criticize at all, and that's the Wali al-Faqih, which means supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. So you cannot criticize him. If questions are asked about him, they just say no comment, so on and so forth. So while you're allowed to criticize the government, you're showing yourself as open, you're not allowed to question the leader himself, who actually controls the entire country, clearly shows that there is this is not an absolute democratic process where you're allowed to topple someone. You're allowed to topple a government, a civilian government dispensation, but not the cleric. And that's why there are 2 simultaneous elections. Why are they being held together? Because the Ayatollah thought that if both are held together, there would be a voter turnout. And that will help in showing that, okay, people have also come for this. And the Guardian Council will then finally decide who will succeed the Ayatollah. Whereas there are some reports that actually say that the Ayatollah himself is not keen on his sons succeeding. But and it's interesting. But again, we'll have to wait and see who the council thinks will take what they have built over the years forward. Rather than dilute it. I mean, there could be some changes depending on its generational shift. So there could be some changes, but to what extent?
But not an outright change.
Not radical.
Not radical.
Not radical. So again, we'll have to wait and see how they really, who they really elect or select.
Yes. But regardless, I mean, either of the 2 would...
It's a country of conservatives. The supreme leader cannot be questioned. They will continue to be under sanctions.
Yeah.
Strategically, Iran is a very important country. The way it is positioned, where it is placed, and that's why for India, given that we have Pakistan
Yes.
and we need access to Afghanistan, is the reason why Iran will continue to remain a very important strategic country and a partner for India. How the others look at it, choose to look at it is different. And, I keep bringing it back to foreign policy and how on many things, countries such as India, China are not aligned, but on many foreign policy issues,
Yeah.
you will see Russia, India, China, the RIC,
Yes.
more aligned than we would be with the West. Whether if it's with Russia,
Yeah.
given the Russia-Ukraine war,
Yeah.
or China, India, Russia stand on Syria, where the West, is absolutely against the regime, and these three countries aren't. Or for that matter, Iran, where the three countries are engaging Iran quite a bit, and China and Russia, in fact, support
Yeah.
Iran. A lot of support for China comes
Definitely.
from for Iran comes from China. So on a lot of foreign policy issues and positions, you see RIC more aligned than the Quad partners.
Actually, that's a very interesting point. And like you spoke of China, I think in our podcast, we have discussed the Saudi Arabia-Iran deal that was brokered by China, and that was historic.
Yes.
And but on that front also, I was actually wondering, although with Iran and US elections are just going sort of parallelly, but during Trump's tenure, the tensions in the Gulf region and between Saudi Arabia and Iran, they were specifically very heightened because Trump was courting Saudi Arabia, but also sanctioning Iran because of the latter's, missile program. But ever since the end of Trump's presidency, there seems to be this realization that among the Gulf countries that they need to sort of band together now and protect their interests in the region, which is also what China has been proposing and wanting to effect, and that's how China also came in the picture, sort of. So, although it's very hypothetical, but I just want to understand that if there's a change in power in the US with Trump coming back, and in Tehran also, we are sort of, there's a legitimacy that will be held in Tehran with the successor coming in. So, you think there is a possibility of any sort of change in the Gulf region with Trump coming in and
See,
sort
it's
of
a
build?
very important question, but let me just put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Now, what happened during the Obama administration was one of the biggest achievements, and a very important one was the JCPOA, which is the nuclear deal with the 5+1 members of the West and
Yes.
Iran. And that really was a conversation on mitigating the crisis and containing the crisis of a nuclear war in the region, and ensuring that that Iran does not have nuclear missile capabilities, and that their enrichment program is only for civilian purposes. And that conversation moved forward and was something that was hailed by the West, the world, because they finally thought that there was maybe some semblance of sanity that you were seeing with regards to enrichment programs that could go haywire, and that could have caused or impacted that part of the region and the world very, very adversely. So over here, this conversation was held as one of the most important conversations. But come Trump, he withdrew from the JCPOA, and Iran became again an enemy state. Then they restarted their program. There was no conversations, massive sanctioning, so on and so forth continued. With Trump gone and Biden coming, they started engaging Iran again, but not to the extent that Obama did or could. because Iran has taken a very hard stance on, the positioning of the West and how they view Iran, and that it is not to the advantage of Iran, that it is against Iran's national interests. And the Arab world also has a very unique feature over here because they engage America as a very important partner, but they also engage China as a very important partner.
Yeah.
They're not choosing or putting all their eggs in one American basket.
Yes.
And so in the process, in the recent past, what happened was that while they were engaging the Biden administration, they were also being sanctioned and continued to be sanctioned. And the Chinese then came in and started engaging Iran and the Arab world to become the peace brokers. And so the Iranians, skeptical of America, thought it better to engage China and maybe go that route, because also there is a sense, that and they early on everybody started reading the political map of the United States of America. So should Trump return, it'll all go back to America hates Iran, so on and so forth. They'll pull out of any talks with Iran. With the Israel-Hamas war now, more so because Iran has openly almost not just supporting the cause of Palestine, but also Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, the factions in Iraq, all supported by Iran, has certainly put a lot of stress on how Iran can be, for the West, a destabilizing factor rather than a stabilizing factor. So in all this, and this was ahead of the war, but the reading was that it is better to have China broker a peace deal, and China managed that. Should Trump return and Iran again, become this massive problem for the West, then China will have more inroads into the region with Iran and with their foothold in the Arab world. They will try brokering peace deals between Iran and other Arab nations. And should that happen, there will be a huge change in the geopolitics of the region. So we'll have to wait and see how that really pans out, because everybody, while, Saudi Arabia, the Arab world, might not be very happy with the lead role that Iran has taken in the Israel-Hamas war, where they're trying to take a step back and read the room and see what's really happening, not get into a direct conflict, but they're all very upset. And while they're just upset and they've been talking about how upset they are, Iran is acting. So, for them, it's almost like losing a bit and yet not wanting to get into a space where they will lose a lot more should they be in the war. I don't know if I'm making sense to you.
No, it actually makes a lot of sense.
So it is a very complicated situation. There are too many layers over here. And Iran, no matter what, with this administration and of course the supreme leader, no matter what, this would have been the result of the elections, there will be a continuum that you will see in how they take forward their policies, particularly at a time when the region is at war. And for the Arab world to see that this country, with certain elements, have done more for a pushback when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war than the Arab world put together, where they have been going everywhere condemning and then threatening that this could lead to an escalation. We don't want an escalation, but nothing beyond. The situation where Trump returns, I think, would mean that China will have more space to engage Iran and the Arab world, because America certainly will not be a peace broker or a peacemaker,
of course,
in that scenario. How will Trump react to any peace with Iran, between Iran and other countries, is something we'll have to wait and see. But nobody... the big countries no longer take orders from America. That's quite clear when the Russia-Ukraine war happened and Saudi Arabia was asked by America to increase output, and they didn't. They said, why at this price should I increase output of a finite resource,
Yeah. Of oil
especially
reserves,
when
right?
you are screaming Khashoggi trial in
Yes.
America.
Yes.
So, everybody is looking out for their own interests.
Mhm.
So they will also look out for their own interests, and how does that play out for them, first in the region, then the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, a lot is happening, too many elections.
Yeah. Quite an explanation,
So,
Geeta. A
so
lot of
we'll have to wait and see
yeah.
how it really falls, how
Mm.
these pieces of the
Mhm.
puzzle really fall in
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
after the US elections.
Very true. So, in the upcoming episodes, we'll deal with each of the issues that you stated so that I and all the listeners also will get a
Too
clearer picture.
complicated.
Too complicated, yeah. But these are intertwined. Essentially, what I understood is that, the rift in the Gulf, with, like you said, Iran taking the lead, Saudi Arabia, like countries which are, big, they were actually disappointed, but the rift is sort of being smoothened with the intervention of China, and China is making more inroads in the Gulf, and with Trump coming in, definitely uh, China's footprint is going to
Increase.
increase. Yeah. So a lot many other things that you said, we'll try to understand and make sense in the upcoming episodes should Trump come to power. But just lastly, as we sum this episode, we were discussing Iran elections, how in some way, or like entirely, we can say that this is ultimately a farce. Can you just tell me, in the as we just go, with the reformists being purged, you mentioned there were 6 women candidates, which is, of course,
Each seat, for each
it's for
seat.
each
So
seat,
it's,
which is
it's
also
quite a bit.
significant. But it's just 30 out of these 12,500 candidates, they were reformists. Almost all have been disqualified,
Debarred.
debarred. Now, once a hybrid theocracy come democracy, do you think we can say that Iran is slowly and steadily morphing into an absolute, dictatorship with a very shaky base? Because if you look at the clerical system also, that is not united.
I don't think I can say it's moving towards. I think it's a continuum of what it is today.
Yeah.
But what I hope to see is that, a country cannot continue sustaining itself like this. They will have to make some changes to accommodate not just the aspirations and wishes of their own people,
Yeah.
but also in how other countries view Iran. If it were just external forces, one could have understood. But there is too much of an internal pressure right now on the administration. So they will have to make some changes. I don't see it happen anytime soon, given the clampdown that you see, not just on people, on politicians as well. But somewhere down the line, those changes will have to be made. Will it happen come there is a change in the supreme leadership? And how accommodating the supreme leader then of that time will be in bringing about some reforms.
But you see that minor change in Mojtaba, like you said, the generational.
I don't know whether if see again, the Grand Council will not choose somebody who will come with radical changes.
Yeah.
Because again, for them it is a very hard fought, very with great difficulty one has got this space, this political space, and they will never want to let go of that. So the conservatism will continue to thrive in Iran. But I'm just saying that there could be some reforms in how women are positioned and placed within the country. The laws and rights of the women, and not just women, even for a citizen of Iran, how he's placed, the kind of work, the kind of economy that Iran has become today. They have a lot of oil, is the reason why they still sustain themselves with, selling a lot of it in the high seas. But that's not how a country can function and work for all times to come. So there will have to be something that will have to, and what has given within their own country is the fact that there are now protests questioning the regime itself. If it was just external, it was different.
But I mean, the protests also
Yes,
have been
quashed. But does
like
not
we've
mean
seen
that doesn't.
executions. We've
Yeah,
seen
but does not mean that they have stopped completely. Even today, if you see the videos just before the election and during campaigning, a lot of people came out and said they're not happy. The only thing, that's what I'm saying, that nobody openly criticized the Ayatollah, but they all criticized the government, the administration. They questioned whether the rights and freedom, all of that.
But that is given. But ultimately, we also know that the real power vests in the hands of the supreme leader. So, I mean, what is the point of criticizing? I mean, I'm not saying that this is not like a big move.
No,
Of
it's
course,
just the room. It's
but
just the room of how far you can go to say you're unhappy. If you're saying you're unhappy with what is happening, you don't even have to name the person to say that, because everybody knows who's in control. But those are just small steps in a struggle that's going to be a very long one, a very arduous, long struggle for the people, especially women of Iran. Having said that, I go back to the fact that there are on many counts where India and Iran are aligned
yeah,
strategically in how they view the international space. That no one else should tell a country how to and what to.
yes,
But yes, their own people are telling them how to and what to. That they should be paying heed to. Apart from that, how they're aligned, with whom they're aligned, the idea of an axis of evil, so on and so forth, is only because there is one faction that thinks of the other as evil. And that's all in the realm of foreign policy and strategic space that we can, decipher on a later date. But for today, the fact that we've seen a 41% voter turnout,
yeah,
with 69% staying away from the polls, clearly is a massive message.
yeah. To
Not just for the supreme leader to think that he is losing the confidence of the people, but also for him now to realize, which is what they were fearing, that a lot of external pressures will come in to say your people are not happy with you, that this is the lowest voter turnout. So there's going to be immense pressure, a lot of conversation, a lot of chat across the world now on the low voter turnout, which is why all their focus was on trying to get people to come and vote.
Yeah, if you see Tehran, it's just 25% voter turnout. So it's the capital city. So, yeah, I think we'll end on that note, Geeta. It's a very detailed conversation. And I hope the listeners and the viewers also gained.
At least it's better. Before you end, at least it's better than some countries where you're monitored on whether if you voted or not. Because then they are pulled out. They have credit ratings in China, and your credit ratings will go down. In North Korea, you have to go and vote. Have to. And you have to go and vote the supreme leader. So there is no choice to not go and vote. The fact that there is a choice to not vote in itself goes to show that there is some freedom on how you voice.
At least there's it's for optics. To someone?
No, in fact not. If it was for optics, they would have actually got people out to vote.
Voted,
So that the fact that force did not take place in itself should be a breather. But it is such a sad situation where we take some sort of a relief from the fact that they
not go.
They could, or they were allowed not to vote. On that note, Anna.
Better. On that note, Geeta, we'll end the conversation. And I hope to all the listeners and viewers, please let us know what you thought of this episode. It was a primer, definitely. But although I don't think there would be much change like we discussed.
But there will be Super Tuesday. We'll go back to US elections for sure.
Yeah, we will, for sure. And many other countries who will be going for elections this year will be having a close watch on that. And interesting developments in the geopolitical framework and scenario will, of course, be looking at that as well. So stay tuned. And meanwhile, if you have any inputs and feedback, let us know. The number you can reach out is 8588966996. And the email ID is pods@indiatoday.com. Or you can message Geeta and I. We are, you could tweet basically.
Please
Not that
do.
Geeta's
Let us
DM is
know.
open.
Let us know what your views are, but you can still reply to our tweets, and let us know what you think of the show. Let us know if you have questions. We'll be glad to respond to those to your queries.
Yeah.
And keep writing in. Suggestions are always welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.